I was born to break worlds. Now I watch my hands work the hydraulic release clamps and wonder whose hands they are. When does a man become merely the mechanism he operates? The rebreather hisses its third cycle, 14 seconds between each mechanical breath. I count them because counting is what remains when thinking stops. My name is Guardsman Varen Holst. Breacher team designates Sigma 7-3, and I have performed 47 successful wall penetrations in the siege of Hive Vorten. Each one carved a corridor of flesh and fire through reinforced ceramite. Each one was a masterpiece of explosive geometry and timed detonation. Each one brought me closer to the recognition I craved. That single moment when the regimental commander would see my work and understand that I was not merely a tool, but an artist of destruction. Yesterday, we breached the Basilica Wall. 40 meters of pre-heresy construction, layered ferrocrete and blessed adamantium, defended by 3,000 heretic militia. The calculations took me 16 hours. The placement of the shaped charges required tolerances measured in millimeters. The timing sequence was a symphony of escalating pressure waves, each detonation creating the cavity for the next, the entire structure collapsing inward in a choreographed implosion that left a perfect killing corridor 60 meters deep. It was flawless. I watched the wall fold like paper. I heard the screams of the defenders crushed between collapsing sections. I saw our assault teams pour through the gap I had created, their lasguns painting the smoke red. I stood in the breach as the dust settled, surrounded by my handiwork, and felt nothing at all, no pride, no satisfaction, no connection to the achievement my hands had wrought. Just the rebreather's hiss and the counting, always the counting. The Medal of the Crimson Breach arrived this morning. Grade 3 Commendation. My name inscribed on the regimental honor roll. Commissar Vent himself delivered it, clasping my shoulder with the kind of firm respect reserved for soldiers who exceed expectation. I accepted it with the proper words. I saluted with the proper form. And when he left, I placed it in my footlocker beside the other medals and could not remember which breach had earned which recognition. I was a breacher. The first through the wall, the tip of the Imperium's spear. I lived for the moment of penetration, when all my calculations and all my training compressed into a single point of violent perfection. I have performed this sacred duty 47 times, and I no longer know why I am doing it. What is a weapon that has forgotten its purpose? The assembly bay smells of promethium and unwashed bodies. Standard atmospheric composition, 17% oxygen. Trace particulates of burnt propellant, temperature holding at 13 degrees Celsius. My armor's internal cogitator displays the metrics without my asking. Data flows across my VESA in Ambus script, measuring and quantifying everything around me while I prepare for breach operation 48. I should feel anticipation. The mission profile indicates a secondary wall structure, less fortified than the Basilica but defended by suspected traitor marine presence. This should excite me. Traitor marines represent the ultimate test of breacher doctrine, superhuman reflexes, ceramite armor, weapons that can punch through our ram's forward glacis. The calculations required to breach their defensive positions represent the pinnacle of my craft. I feel nothing. My hands move through the pre-operation checklist with mechanical precision. Charge packs checked and verified at 83% standard density. Melter, Boris 4 units, blessed and anointed. Thermal cores reading optimal. Hydraulic ram pressure holding at 4,000 pounds per square inch. Armor integrity 91%, acceptable within operational parameters. Each item receives my attention, my professional assessment, my thorough documentation in the mission log. None of it touches me. Guardsman Keller works beside me, securing his own equipment. He is singing some low, tuneless hymn to the God Emperor, the kind of devotional noise that breachers use to steady themselves before insertion. I recognize the melody. I used to sing it myself, back when the songs meant something, back when the words carried weight beyond their phonetic structure. 48 Holst. Keller says, his voice muffled by his rebreather. One more and you hit the half-century mark. The breacher's benediction. They'll probably transfer you to training cadre after that. Get you out of the ram and into a nice safe instructor's role. Perhaps, I say. Perhaps. Throne man, that's the dream. You survive 50 breaches. You've earned the right to teach others how to die properly. He laughs, the sound wet and ragged through the respirator. Me, I'm only at 23. Got a long way to go before I can rest. 23. I remember 23. It was the North Wall of Manufactorum Sigma, a textbook insertion with minimal casualties. I remember feeling invincible. I remember believing that each breach made me sharper, more refined, more essential to the regiment's success. I remember thinking that by the time I reached 50, I would be a legend. Now I am 2 away from 50, and I cannot recall what 24 through 46 looked like. They blur together in my memory, walls and fire, and the mechanical rhythm of the ram's hydraulics. Each one was different. Each one was the same. Each one took something from me that I did not know I possessed until its absence created a void. You ever think about what happens after 50? I ask. The question surprises me. I did not plan to speak it aloud. Keller pauses in his equipment check. Through his visor, I can see his eyes narrow. After. Throne Holst, there is no after. We breach until we die or until they pull us out. Those are the only endings for men like us. And that doesn't trouble you. Trouble me. Why would it trouble me? This is what we're for. We're breachers. We break walls so better men can take the ground beyond. It's an honor, a sacred duty. His voice carries the kind of fervent certainty I recognize from my own throat months ago, years ago, lifetimes ago. I nod and return to my checklist. The conversation dies. Keller resumes his hymn. I observe myself observing him. I note the authenticity of his faith, the genuine connection he feels to our purpose. I catalogue it as I would catalogue the symptoms of a disease. Something foreign and inexplicable, something that exists in others but not in myself. I was like him once. I am certain of this. But the memory feels second-hand, as if I am recalling something I read rather than something I lived. The ram's engines cough to life. A deep, mechanical growl that resonates through the deck plating and up through the soles of my boots. The sound should trigger something, adrenaline, focus, the narrowing of attention that precedes combat. Standard physiological response. Expected. Documented in every training manual. My heart rate remains constant. 68 beats per minute. Unchanged, I climb into the ram's crew compartment. The space is exactly 3 meters wide, 4 meters long, 1.8 meters tall. 12 breachers fit inside, arrayed in 2 rows of 6, facing each other across the central aisle. We are locked into our harnesses, our bodies pressed against shock, absorption webbing, our weapons mag locked to the overhead rails. The ram's interior is designed for maximum efficiency and minimum comfort. We are ammunition, not passengers. The hatch seals. The sound is final, absolute, a tomb closing. I have heard it 47 times before. I will hear it again in moments. The metaphor is not lost on me. Darkness. Then the combat lighting activates, red and dim, preserving night vision for the moment we spill out into contested territory. In the crimson gloom, I can see my team. Keller across from me, still mouthing his prayers. Guardsman Vros beside him, eyes closed, conserving mental energy. Guardsman Tanis at the far end, checking and rechecking his las pistol, despite the fact that our weapons are locked and inaccessible until breach completion. Each man has his ritual. Each man has his method of managing the fear. I have none. I had methods once. I had rituals. I had the pre-breach prayer I would recite, the mental rehearsal of the operation sequence, the visualization of the perfect detonation pattern. These techniques were essential to my performance. They centered me. They connected me to the sacred purpose of my duty. Now I sit in the darkness and count respirator cycles and wonder when I stopped needing comfort. The ram lurches forward. Acceleration presses me back against the webbing. Through the armor plating, I can hear the muffled crack of artillery, the distant screaming of rocket engines, the eternal background noise of siege warfare. We are moving toward the wall. Toward breach point designated Theta 9. Toward the moment when I will perform my function with the expected excellence and feel nothing at all. Commissar Vent's voice crackles through the Vox system. Sigma 7-3, you are cleared for final approach. Enemy resistance estimated at moderate intensity. Traitor Marine presence confirmed via Auspex scan. You will breach, secure the corridor, and hold for reinforcement. The God Emperor protects. The God Emperor protects. We respond in unison. The phrase is automatic, muscle memory of the throat and tongue. I used to believe those words. I used to feel their weight settle over me like a protective mantle. The assurance that I served something greater than myself, that my sacrifice had meaning in the vast calculus of the Imperium's survival. The words were a shield against fear and doubt. They transformed me from a man into an instrument of divine will. Now they are sounds, vibrations in air, phonies without significance. The ram accelerates. I can feel the engine strain, the ancient machine's spirit pushing itself toward maximum velocity. We will hit the wall at 60 kilometers per hour. The forward ram, a solid block of reinforced adamantium shaped like a wedge, will focus that kinetic energy into a point approximately 2 meters wide. My charges, positioned at critical stress points, will detonate in a sequence timed to the nanosecond, fracturing the wall's internal structure milliseconds before impact. The combination of explosive force and kinetic energy will create the breach. The mathematics are elegant. The execution is precise. The outcome is predictable within acceptable variance margins, and I am empty. I close my eyes and search for something, anything, that resembles the passion I once felt. I recall my first breach, the north gate of Hive Secundus, when I was 18 years old and newly assigned to the Breacher Corps. I remember the terror that preceded it, the absolute certainty that I would die in the first 5 seconds, the way my hands shook as I armed the charges. I remember the blast, the ram's impact, the sudden violent birth into the hell of close quarters combat. I remember surviving. I remember the euphoria that followed, the profound relief and pride that I had done my duty and lived to tell of it. I remember feeling. That memory exists somewhere in my brain, stored in synaptic structures that neurology teaches are permanent. I can access the facts of it, the date, the location, the names of the men who died beside me. But the emotion is gone. I am looking at a painting whose colors have faded to monochrome. I know it was once vibrant, but I cannot imagine what it looked like in full saturation. When did this happen? When did the transition occur? I try to pinpoint the moment. Was it breach 20? 30? Some specific trauma that severed the connection between action and feeling? But I can find no single incident, no catastrophic event, no breaking point. Just a gradual recession, like a tide pulling back from shore, so slow and so consistent that I did not notice I was stranded until the water was gone. 30 seconds. Vent's voice announces. The team tenses. I observe their preparation through my Veza's peripheral sensors. Heart rates climbing, respiration increasing, stress hormones flooding their systems. Standard pre-combat response. Expected. Normal. My heart rate remains at 68 beats per minute. I am broken, I think. Something essential has been extracted from me, and I have lost the capacity to care that it is gone. The thought should terrify me. Instead, I file it away as another data point in the ongoing catalogue of my deterioration. 20 seconds. The wall approaches. I cannot see it, but I can feel its proximity through the ram's sensors, the increasing density of target lock signals, the subtle adjustments the driver makes to trajectory. The wall is thick. 4 meters of ferrocrete and plasteel, defended by automated turrets and traitor marine fire teams. A significant obstacle. My charges are perfect. I spent 6 hours calculating the placement sequence. I accounted for material composition, structural load distribution, probable defensive reinforcement patterns. I even factored in the wall's age and the likelihood of material fatigue in the lower sections. My work is thorough, professional, beyond reproach. I do not care if it succeeds. 10 seconds. Keller is praying harder now. I can see his lips moving behind his rebreather. Vross has gone completely still, a corpse in waiting. Tanis is weeping, tears running down his face inside his helmet, his body shaking with barely suppressed sobs. He is new. This is his 4th breach. He still has the capacity for fear. I envy him. 5 seconds. The charges detonate. I feel the sequential pattern through the ram's frame, a rippling cascade of force moving up the wall's structure, each blast opening pathways for the next. The timing is precise. Perfect. A mathematical proof rendered in high explosive. 3 seconds. Impact. The world becomes noise and violence. The ram strikes the wall with the force of a meteor, the forward glacis compressing under the load, the entire vehicle shuddering as kinetic energy transfers into the target. Metal screams. Stone shatters. The breach opens like a wound, and we are through. The ram's forward section punches into the corridor beyond. Defensive fire rakes our armor, the distinctive crack of bolter rounds, the hiss of plasma, the throaty roar of heavy stubbers. Our machine's spirit screams damage warnings across every display. Hull integrity dropping. Armor penetration in sections 4 and 7. Crew compartment still secure. The ram shudders to a halt. We have penetrated 17 meters into enemy territory. A textbook insertion. The rear hatch blows open, explosive bolts detonating in perfect sequence. Go! Go! Vent's voice, distant and unnecessary. We deploy. I am the third one out of the ram, my lasgun raised. My training overriding any need for conscious thought. The corridor is thick with smoke and dust. Visibility reduced to 5 meters. Thermal sensors pick up enemy signatures. 3 traitor Marines in the chamber ahead, their enhanced body heat glowing white against the cooler background. Multiple contacts in the side passages. This is a prepared ambush. They were waiting for us. Keller dies first. A bolt around takes him in the chest, the mass reactive shell detonating inside his torso cavity. His body comes apart in a spray of gore and armor fragments. He does not scream. The round is too fast, the damage too catastrophic. He simply ceases to exist in any meaningful way. I observe this. I catalogue it. Guardsman Keller, 23 confirmed breaches, killed in action at 17 meters penetration. His death is statistically probable. Acceptable losses for this type of operation. I feel nothing. We return fire. Our lasguns are inadequate against traitor Marine armor, but we aim for the joints, the exposed sections where ceramite meets ceramite. Disciplined fire. Textbook execution. 2 more of my team die in the first 10 seconds, Vross and Guardsman Halen, both caught by plasma fire that reduces them to slag and smoke. I advance. I do not order it. I do not think it. My body simply executes the movement patterns drilled into it by 10,000 hours of training. I place a crack grenade at the base of a support pillar, set the timer for 6 seconds, and move to cover. The pillar explodes. The ceiling section it was supporting collapses, crushing one of the traitor Marines beneath several tons of ferrocrete. Efficient, professional, meaningless. The firefight continues. I am distantly aware that we are winning. Our numbers and our willingness to die in close quarters is overwhelming the traitor Marines' individual superiority. Reinforcements arrive from the main assault force. The corridor is secured. The breach is successful. I stand in the center of the carnage and count the dead. 17 of my team. 3 traitor Marines. Acceptable ratio. Tactically sound. I should feel something. Pride in our success. Grief for the fallen. Something. Nothing. Commissar Vent finds me there, standing amid the bodies. Exemplary work, Holst. The breach was perfect. Clean penetration. Minimal deviation from projected corridor. You've outdone yourself. Yes, sir, I say. 48 confirmed breaches. 2 away from the benediction. How does it feel? How does it feel? I look at Keller's body, at what remains of it. He was singing before we launched. He had faith. He had purpose. He had the capacity to feel fear and overcome it through devotion. He had everything I have lost, and now he is meat scattered across ferrocrete. It feels adequate, sir, I say. Vent studies me for a long moment. I can see suspicion forming in his eyes, the commissar's perpetual vigilance for signs of corruption or cowardice. But he finds nothing in my expression except professional competence, because that is all that remains. Get some rest, Guardsman. We move again at 0400. Yes, sir. I return to the assembly bay. I clean my equipment with the same methodical precision I apply to everything else. I document the breach in my personal log: time, location, casualties, technical observations. The entries are comprehensive and detailed and completely devoid of anything resembling human experience. I was born to break worlds. Now I break them with the mechanical efficiency of a machine, and I am changing. Something essential is leaving me. I can feel it draining away like blood from a wound I cannot see. And the worst part is that I am observing my own dissolution with the clinical detachment of a medico examining a patient. I am both the subject and the observer of my own decay. I am becoming something else. 2. The medica tent smells of counterseptic and gangrene. Standard field hospital atmosphere. Sterile chemicals failing to mask the underlying rot of war. Wounded flesh. I am here not because I am injured but because I need answers. Chirurgeon Mellis looks up from her work as I enter. She is elbow deep in a guardsman's abdominal cavity, performing some procedure I lack the medical knowledge to identify. Her augmetic eyes register my presence with the characteristic whir of mechanical focusing. Guardsman Holst, she says, not pausing in her work. You are not scheduled for any medical procedures. Is this an emergency assessment? No, ma'am. I require consultation on a non-physical matter. Her mechadendrites pause their suturing. I am a chirurgeon, not a confessor. If you require spiritual counseling, it is medical. I interrupt. Potentially neurological. This captures her attention. She finishes her current suture, seals the guardsman's incision with bio-gel, and waves a servo skull to complete the procedure. She approaches me, her augmetic eyes cycling through different visual spectra: thermal, chemical, electromagnetic. Describe your symptoms. Promotional detachment. Progressive inability to experience effect in response to stimuli that should provoke strong reaction. Specifically in relation to my duty as a breacher. Duration of symptoms. Uncertain. Gradual onset. Possibly beginning after breach operation 20 or 25. Definitely pronounced after breach 30. Her mechadendrites deploy diagnostic instruments, neural scanners, chemical analyzers, things whose function I can only guess at. Any physical symptoms? Headaches, seizures, memory loss? No. Cognition remains intact. Technical proficiency unaffected. Only the emotional response has degraded. She nods slowly, her mechanical components processing this information with soft clicking sounds. I see. And you are concerned that this represents pathology rather than adaptation. The question surprises me. Is there a difference? Perhaps, perhaps not. She gestures for me to sit. I comply. Her instruments begin their work, scanning my brain activity, my neurochemical levels, my autonomic responses. You are aware of the documented psychological cost of siege warfare, the specific strain it places on soldiers engaged in assault operations. I have read the technical literature. Attrition rates, combat stress reactions, shell shock. And you have read, I presume, the classified addenda available to senior medical staff, the sections discussing the documented phenomenon among multi-breach survivors. I have not. My security clearance does not extend to classified medical data. I tell her this. Then allow me to educate you, Guardsman Holst. You are not the first breacher to experience what you describe. In fact, you are statistically typical. She pulls up a data slate, scrolls through entries I cannot quite read from my position. The phenomenon has been documented across 15 separate siege campaigns over the last 3 centuries. It occurs almost universally in breacher specialists who survive beyond 30 separate operations. The progression is consistent. First, a subtle flattening of emotional response. Then a more pronounced detachment from the meaning and purpose of the duty. Finally, a complete dissociation. The soldier continues to perform with full technical competence while experiencing no subjective connection to their actions. My heart rate, I note distantly, has increased. 74 beats per minute. This is a known condition, known, documented, and utterly untreatable. She deactivates her instruments. The neurological scans confirm what I suspected. Your amygdala activity is severely depressed. Your limbic system is essentially dormant. Your prefrontal cortex has developed compensatory patterns of hyperactivity. You are experiencing your life, intellectually rather than emotionally. You think your feelings rather than feel them. What causes this? Repetitive trauma exposure combined with enforced emotional suppression. You are trained to function in situations of extreme danger without allowing fear to compromise your performance. You do this successfully, again and again, until the neural pathways responsible for fear response atrophy. But fear is not isolated. It is connected to the entire emotional network. Suppress one emotion successfully enough, and you suppress them all. She says this as if it is a simple mechanical failure, as if my soul is a piece of equipment that has worn out through overuse. Can it be reversed? No. The damage is permanent. Your brain has fundamentally reorganized itself around the absence of emotional response. You will continue to function. In fact, you will likely function better than your emotionally intact colleagues. You will make clearer decisions, take more calculated risks, maintain composure in situations that would break lesser men. You will be, by every measurable metric, an ideal soldier. And the cost? You will never again experience joy, or love, or satisfaction in accomplishment. You will exist in a state of perpetual observation, watching your own life as if it were happening to someone else. The technical term is dissociative detachment syndrome, though the medical texts prefer not to use that name. Too clinical. Too honest. I sit with this information. I process it through the hyperactive prefrontal cortex that Melis has identified. I note the irony that I am receiving the diagnosis of emotional death with perfect emotional neutrality. I am the proof of the diagnosis in the moment of diagnosis. How many breachers develop this condition? Approximately 93% of all breacher specialists who survive beyond 30 operations. The remainder either die in subsequent breaches or are transferred out of the specialty before the damage becomes permanent. You are part of the statistical majority, Guardsman Holst. You are progressing exactly as expected along a well-documented trajectory toward a well-documented end state. And the end state is... She hesitates. For the first time in our conversation, I see something in her expression that might be pity. Continuation of service until death, usually occurring between breach 45 and breach 60. The dissociation that protects you from fear also protects you from appropriate caution. You will take risks that a healthy soldier would not. You will walk into situations that your emotional intuition would flag as suicidal. And eventually, one of those situations will kill you. So I am already dead. I am simply waiting for the physical fact to catch up with the psychological reality. That is one interpretation. Another is that you have become the perfect weapon. No fear, no hesitation, no doubt, pure function. Perhaps that is what the Imperium needs from its breachers. Not men, but mechanisms shaped like men. I should be horrified. I should be terrified. I should feel rage at this revelation, or despair, or the desperate desire to escape my fate. I feel nothing. Thank you, chirurgeon. You have been informative. Will you request transfer out of the breacher corps? I can provide medical documentation supporting such a request. Psychological grounds. It would not be seen as cowardice, would I? The question hangs in the air. I examine it from every angle, applying the hyperactive analytical capacity that has replaced my emotions. Transfer would mean survival. It would mean escape from the statistical certainty of death in the next 12 breaches. It would be the rational choice. But rationality is not what drives me anymore. Rationality would have driven me to transfer after breach 30, when I first noticed the symptoms. What drives me now is something else, something I lack the emotional capacity to name, but which I recognize as the final expression of my dissolving self. No, I say, I will continue. Why? Because this is what I am. Because without this function, I am not even the hollow shell I have become. Because the alternative is to exist in the world without purpose, and at least in the RAM I have a role to play, a sequence to execute, a reason to occupy space and consume oxygen. Because it is my duty, I say instead. She nods unsurprised. Then I will note in your file that you were informed of your condition and chose to continue service. The administrator will be pleased. Experienced breachers are valuable assets. Assets, not men, not soldiers, assets. She is more correct than she knows. I return to my quarters and begin my research. If this condition is documented, then there must be records, case studies, personal accounts from other breachers who have walked this path before me. I request access to the regimental archives, citing my impending 50th breach as justification for reviewing historical breacher performance data. The request is granted. The administratum sees no harm in allowing a successful specialist to study his predecessors. I spend 3 days in the archive chambers reading. The files are extensive, hundreds of breachers across dozens of campaigns. I read thereafter action reports, their personal logs, their final transmissions before death. I search for my own experience reflected in their words. I find it everywhere. Breacher Sergeant Talos Ven, Siege of Hive Mortessa 40, 1 successful breaches, performed operation with standard efficiency, team casualties within acceptable parameters, no anomalies to report. The words are professional, competent, utterly dead. Breacher First Class Morton Kraz, Siege of Fortress Valdane, 53 successful breaches. I observe that I no longer dream. Or perhaps I dream only of breaches, and cannot distinguish between memory and sleep. The distinction seems unimportant. Breacher Corporal Justin Harrow, Siege of Hive Praxis, 44 successful breaches. Final log entry. I have forgotten why we are breaching. I have forgotten the name of the world. I have forgotten my own face. But I remember the charge placement sequence. I remember the hydraulic pressure tolerances. I remember how to die well. Perhaps that is enough. The pattern is universal. The progression is identical. Each man describes the same journey, from passionate devotion to clinical execution to absolute detachment. Each man continues to serve with increasing efficiency, even as his subjective experience hollows out. Each man dies in service, usually between breaches 45 and 60, exactly as Melis predicted. But there is something else in the records. Something the Charogen did not mention. Hidden in the appendices, in the sections marked for Medicare review only, I find the autopsy reports. Standard practice for all breacher specialists who die in combat. The Mechanicus wants to understand what makes us effective, to quantify and replicate our performance. The autopsies are thorough, comprehensive. They detail every aspect of our physical and neurological structure, and they reveal something unexpected. In approximately 30% of breacher specialists who survive beyond 40 operations, the autopsies reveal evidence of what the Mechanicus terms neural restructuring. The brain does not simply atrophy, it adapts. It reorganizes. Connections that once handled emotional processing are repurposed for spatial calculation, threat assessment, and tactical analysis. The breacher's mind becomes a specialized organ, optimized for a single function, the perfect execution of wall penetration. The reports describe it in clinical terms. Subject's neural architecture demonstrates unprecedented specialization. Emotional processing centers have been essentially cannibalized to support enhanced tactical cognition. Subject's capacity for instantaneous geometric calculation exceeds baseline human norms by a factor of 4. Recommendation: harvest neural tissue for further study. They are describing me. They are describing what I am becoming. I am not dying, I am transforming. My humanity is not being lost. It is being consumed and converted into something else. Something more efficient, more perfect, more aligned with my function. The process is documented, irreversible, and accelerating. I close the archive files and sit in the silence of the chamber. I should feel horror. I should feel despair. I should feel the desperate human need to resist this transformation, to cling to whatever remains of my original self. But I am already too far gone. The capacity for that kind of resistance requires emotions I no longer possess. Instead, I feel only a kind of clinical curiosity. I want to observe this process to its conclusion. I want to document my own transformation, to provide a comprehensive account of what it feels like to become a thing. I am the autopsy and the corpse simultaneously. I am my own final specimen. I request permission to review the Basilica Wall breach. The request is unusual. Breachers do not typically perform retrospective analysis of successful operations, but I am now recognized as the regiment's most experienced specialist. My request is granted without question. The wall still stands, or what remains of it. The breach corridor has been fortified and converted into a permanent access point. Our engineers have installed reinforced gates and defensive positions. What was once a wound is now a scar, integrated into the siege's permanent infrastructure. I walk the corridor alone. 1500 hours local time. The shift change between assault rotations. The space is temporarily empty except for me and my memories. I remember standing here 48 hours ago. I remember the dust and the screams and the bodies. I remember feeling nothing and being disturbed by that absence. Now even the disturbance is gone. I am simply here observing the space, cataloging the details. The wall section I breached was 4.3 meters thick. My charges created a fracture pattern that propagated through 68% of the structural depth before the ram's kinetic impact completed the penetration. Textbook execution. Perfect angle of approach. Minimal deviation from projected trajectory. A masterpiece. I try to remember what creating a masterpiece used to feel like. I try to access the pride, the satisfaction, the sense of accomplishment that should accompany work of this caliber. I know intellectually that I once felt these things. But the memory is sterile. I am looking at a photograph of an emotion, not experiencing the emotion itself. I place my hand on the breach wall. The ceramite is cool against my palm. I can feel the texture of it, the rough grain, the places where explosive force created microscopic fractures. I imagine I can feel the echo of the detonation, the violence frozen in stone. I feel nothing. A voice behind me. It is beautiful, is it not? I turn. A man stands in the corridor entrance, tall, thin, wearing the robes of a Mechanicus adept. His face is more machine than flesh, his eyes replaced by multi-spectrum optical arrays that glow faintly in the dimness. I do not understand, I say. The breach, your work, it is beautiful. A perfect application of force and geometry. The mathematical elegance alone is worthy of admiration. He approaches, his movements precise and mechanical. I am Engineer Malthius. I have been studying your breaching patterns. You have a gift. I have training and experience. No, you have something more. Your breaches are not merely successful, they are optimal. You consistently achieve maximum penetration with minimum resource expenditure. Your charge placement demonstrates an intuitive understanding of material science that exceeds what training alone could provide. I have analyzed 47 of your operations. Each one is a work of refined excellence. He says this as if it is a compliment. Perhaps for the mechanicus it is. I appreciate your analysis, Engineer. You do not. Appreciation requires emotional response. You are incapable of appreciation. I can see it in your physiological indicators. His optical arrays focus on me with uncomfortable intensity. Cortisol levels minimal. Heart rate resting standard. Pupil dilation absent. You are experiencing this conversation with complete neutrality. You are observant. I am curious. You are a fascinating specimen, Guardsman Holst. You represent an advanced stage of a process I have been documenting across the Breacher Corps. The transformation of human into tool. The refinement of flesh toward a single perfect function. You know about this process. I have catalogued it. The mechanicus has great interest in understanding how organic systems adapt to specialized functions. You breachers provide excellent data. Your psychological deterioration corresponds precisely with your increased tactical efficiency. It is a trade, humanity for capability. Most find the trade unconscionable. But you have already made it, have you not? I had no choice. Incorrect. You had many choices. You chose to continue after breach 30. You chose to ignore the warning signs. You chose to pursue excellence in your function at the cost of your selfhood. These were choices, Guardsman Holst. You made them consciously, even if you did not understand their full implications. He is correct. I know this. I have known this since my conversation with Chirurgeon Mellus. But hearing it stated so plainly creates something in me, not quite an emotion, but an intellectual recognition of significance. Why are you telling me this? Because you are approaching a critical threshold. 2 more breaches until your 50th. The statistical likelihood of psychological transformation becoming complete at that point is 97%. You will cross over from dissociative detachment into what the mechanicus terms functional singularity, a state where the distinction between self and function ceases to exist. You will not be Guardsman Holst who performs breaches. You will be the breach itself, embodied in flesh. And you want to document this transition. I want to offer you a choice. He extends a mechadendrite. Attached to it is a data slate. I have compiled the complete archive of breacher transformation studies, every documented case, every autopsy report, every analysis of the neural restructuring process. I am offering you the opportunity to understand exactly what you are becoming. I take the data slate. The weight of it is negligible, but it feels heavy with implication. Why would you give me this? Because knowledge is the only dignity left to you. You cannot prevent the transformation. You cannot reverse it. But you can understand it. You can observe it with full comprehension. You can become an active participant in your own evolution rather than a passive victim. That is worth something, I think, even to a mind as far gone as yours. He turns to leave, his robes whispering against the stone. Engineer, I call. What happens after functional singularity? What becomes of the breachers who reach that state? He pauses. When he turns back, his optical arrays have dimmed slightly, the mechanical equivalent of sadness, perhaps. They continue to breach, with perfect efficiency, until they die. Usually within 10 operations of achieving singularity, they become too good at their function, too willing to take the risks that lead to the deepest penetrations. They die well, Guardsman Holst. They die as the perfect expression of what they were designed to be. He leaves me alone with the data slate. I stand in the corridor for another hour. Then I return to my quarters and begin to read. The data is comprehensive, overwhelming. Malthius has compiled 3 centuries of breacher documentation, thousands of individual cases, each one charting the same inevitable trajectory. I read through the night, absorbing the technical details. The neural scans, the psychological assessments. I am searching for something. An exception. A case where a breacher survived the transformation and retained some fragment of his original self. Some proof that the end state is not absolute obliteration. I find none. Every breacher who reaches functional singularity dies within his next 15 operations. The average is 8. The psychological profile is identical across all cases: complete emotional detachment, enhanced tactical cognition, absolute dedication to function, and a progressive loss of self-preservation instinct. They do not commit suicide. They do not seek death. They simply stop recognizing the difference between calculated risk and suicidal action. They breach deeper, faster, more aggressively. They achieve results that seem miraculous, penetrations that should be impossible, breaches through walls that should withstand any assault. And then they die, because the same lack of fear that makes them effective also makes them incapable of retreat. There is a recording in the archive. Audio only, recovered from the Vox, recorder of Breacher Sergeant Davos Crane. 56th breach, final transmission. This is Breacher Sergeant Crane. We have achieved penetration of the primary fortress wall. Depth of 45 meters. Enemy resistance catastrophic. Team casualties total. I am the only survivor. I can see the command bunker. It is 120 meters ahead. Fortified. Defended by at least 3 traitor marine squads. Impossible approach. Static. The sound of bolter fire. I am going to breach it anyway. Not because I believe I will succeed. Not because I have hope of survival. But because this is what I am. This is all I am. I am the breach. I am the wall falling. I am the moment of penetration. Nothing else exists. Nothing else ever existed. The sound of running, heavy breathing, explosions. If anyone recovers this recording, know that I died well. I died perfect. I died as the thing I was always meant to be. The recording ends. According to the after-action report, Crane's body was found at the base of the command bunker, surrounded by 43 enemy corpses. He had breached it. Alone, with nothing but his combat knife and his remaining crack grenades. The breach was successful. The fortification fell, and Crane died in the moment of completion, transformed so completely into his function that he could not exist beyond it. I listened to the recording 3 times. I am searching for something in Crane's voice, some hint of regret, or fear, or human feeling. But there is nothing. Only clarity, only purpose, only the absolute certainty of a man who has become an idea made flesh. I will sound like that, soon, perhaps in my 49th breach, perhaps in my 50th. I will speak with that same crystalline focus, that same absence of doubt or fear or anything resembling a human soul. The thought should terrify me. It does not. I am already too far gone. I read through more case files. I find the psychological evaluations, the attempts by various commissars and confessors to counsel breachers who were displaying early signs of transformation. The interventions are universally unsuccessful. The confessors speak of duty and faith and the God Emperor's love. The breachers listen politely and return to their rams. The commissars threaten and cajole and execute the occasional breacher for suspected cowardice. But the transformation continues, unaffected by either spiritual guidance or military discipline, because it is not a failure of faith. It is not cowardice. It is the inevitable result of asking human beings to function as ammunition. We are loaded into the ram. We are fired at the wall. We detonate. What remains of us, if anything remains, is no longer relevant to the function. We have served our purpose. The fact that we continue to move and breathe and speak is merely a technical anomaly, a side effect of the Imperium's inefficient use of resources. The Mechanicus understands this. That is why Maltheus gave me the data slate. He recognizes that I am already more machine than man, that I have crossed some invisible threshold where human concerns no longer apply. I am a mechanism observing its own gears turning. I am a function calculating its own parameters. I am a breach analyzing its own geometry. I find one final file. It is marked Theoretical Analysis Post, Singularity Breacher Consciousness, written by Magos Biologis Erund Weil, dated 3 decades ago. The abstract is brief. This paper proposes that breacher specialists who achieve functional singularity do not experience their condition as loss, but as apotheosis. The elimination of emotional processing should be understood not as psychological death, but as psychological refinement, the reduction of consciousness to its essential purpose. The post-singularity breacher does not suffer. He has transcended suffering. He exists in a state of perfect clarity, undistracted by the noise of human emotion, capable of perceiving and executing his function with absolute precision. From a certain perspective, this represents the ultimate achievement of human potential, the complete alignment of being and purpose. The paper goes on to argue that post-singularity breachers should not be pitied but admired. They have become what all servants of the Imperium aspire to be: tools in service to a purpose greater than themselves, unmarred by doubt or weakness or the selfish demands of individual desire. The Magos concludes, the breacher who has achieved functional singularity is not a man who has lost his humanity. He is a man who has transcended it. He is an angel of function, a saint of purpose, a perfected instrument of the God, Emperor's will. That he dies shortly after achieving this state should not be seen as tragedy, but as the natural completion of a transformation that begins the moment he first climbs into the ram. He was always meant to become this. Every breach was a step toward apotheosis. Every wall was a station on the road to perfection. I close the data slate. I sit in the darkness of my quarters and consider this perspective. Is that what I am, a saint of purpose, an angel of function? Or am I simply a broken thing that has learned to call its brokenness enlightenment? I do not know. I lack the emotional capacity to judge. But I recognize that the distinction may be irrelevant. Whether I am ascending or descending, whether I am becoming more or becoming less, the destination is the same. I will breach 2 more walls. I will achieve my 50th operation. I will cross into functional singularity, and then I will die, perfect and empty and complete. The only question that remains is whether I will understand what I have become before the end. Breach 49. The target is a secondary fortress wall, 12 meters thick, defended by automated defense systems and suspected traitor marine presence. Standard parameters. Routine operation. My team consists of 8 guardsmen, all experienced, all competent. None of them know what I am becoming. They see only the veteran specialist, the man with 48 successful breaches, the soldier who has earned his place in the ram through demonstrated excellence. They do not see the absence behind my eyes. We load into the ram. The familiar routine: harness and seal, weapons check, atmospheric verification. The red combat lighting activates. The ram's engines growl to life. We begin our approach. I observe the other guardsman. Guardsman Prisk, 27 years old, 5 confirmed breaches. He is frightened. I can see it in his elevated heart rate, his rapid breathing, his constant checking and rechecking of his equipment. This fear is normal, healthy. It is the appropriate response to the situation. I remember feeling that fear. I remember what it felt like to sit in the ram's darkness and wonder if I would survive the next 5 minutes. I remember the visceral terror of approaching walls that might be my tomb. Now I feel nothing. Guardsman Austin beside me is praying. His lips move in silent devotion, his eyes closed, his body tense with the effort of faith. He believes his prayers will protect him. He believes the God, Emperor, watches over those who serve with proper reverence. This belief gives him comfort. It gives him strength. I remember having that belief. I remember the weight of faith, the way it settled over me like armor against the darkness. I remember thinking that my devotion made me invincible, that righteousness was a shield against the enemy's weapons. Now that faith is gone. I cannot recall when I lost it. Somewhere between breach 20 and breach 30, the prayers stopped being meaningful and became just another part of the pre-operation routine. Somewhere between duty and function, belief evaporated like morning mist. The ram accelerates, 30 seconds to impact. I review the mission parameters one final time. Charge placement optimal. Detonation sequence verified. Ram trajectory calculated to 3 decimal places of precision. Everything is perfect. Everything is ready. And I am observing this perfection with the detachment of an outside observer, as if I am watching someone else perform my function. 20 seconds. Guardsman Prisk vomits inside his helmet. The smell fills the crew compartment, acid and fear. This is his 6th breach. He has not yet adapted. Perhaps he never will. Perhaps he will be one of the fortunate ones who dies or transfers before the transformation takes hold. I envy him his fear. At least he still has the capacity to respond to danger with something resembling human emotion. 10 seconds. The charges detonate. Perfect sequence. The wall's internal structure fractures exactly as calculated. I can feel the precision of it through the ram's sensors, each blast creating the cavity for the next, the mathematics of destruction rendered in high explosive and shaped force. 5 seconds. I close my eyes. Not because I am afraid. Not because I am praying. But because I am trying to feel something. Anything. I am searching through the emptiness inside myself for some fragment of the man I used to be. I find nothing. 3 seconds. I am the breach. 2 seconds. I am the wall falling. 1 second. I am the moment of penetration impact. The world explodes into violence. The ram punches through the wall with perfect force, the breach opening exactly as calculated. We penetrate 23 meters, deeper than projected, better than expected. Defensive fire rakes our armor. Multiple impacts, crew compartment still secure. The rear hatch blows. We deploy. I am the third one out. My last gun is raised. My training is executing without conscious thought. The corridor ahead is filled with smoke and enemy contacts. I identify targets, prioritize threats, engage with disciplined fire. Guardsman Prisk dies beside me. A bolt around takes his head off. His body drops to the floor twitching. I step over it and advance. This is tactically sound. The dead are not my concern. Only forward momentum matters. We clear the corridor. We secure the breach. Reinforcements arrive. The operation is successful. I stand in the center of the carnage and count the dead. 6 of my team. Acceptable casualties. Standard ratio. The breach was perfect. Deeper penetration than any previous operation against this wall type. A technical achievement worth noting in the after-action report. I should feel something. Pride, satisfaction, the rush of survival. Something, nothing. Commissar Vent finds me again. Exceptional work, Holst. 49 confirmed breaches. 1 away from the benediction. 1 away from legend. Yes, sir. How do you feel? The question again. The impossible question. I look at him. I see in his eyes the expectation of something. Some expression of pride or anticipation or human reaction. He wants me to be excited. He wants me to be proud. He wants me to be something other than what I have become. I feel ready for the 50th. I say, it is not an answer to his question, but it is the only truth I have left. He studies me for a long moment. Then he nods, some suspicion confirmed behind his eyes. But he says nothing. What could he say? I am performing my function with perfect efficiency. I am the regiment's most successful breacher. I am exactly what the Imperium needs. That I am no longer human is irrelevant to my utility. I return to my quarters. I do not clean my equipment. I do not document the breach in my personal log. These routines feel suddenly pointless, the vestigial behaviors of a self that no longer exists. Instead, I sit on my cot and stare at my hands. These hands have armed 973 explosive charges. They have sealed myself into the Ram 40 9 times. They have pulled the trigger on a lasgun in defense of the Imperium's advance. They have done all the things that hands are supposed to do in service to duty and function. But they do not feel like my hands. They feel like someone else's hands. Like mechanical appendages I am observing from a distance. I try to remember what it felt like when they were mine. When I could feel the weight of the lasgun, the texture of the charge casing, the warmth of another human being's touch. I try to access any memory of sensation that carried meaning beyond pure data. I cannot. The memories exist. I can recall the facts of them, dates, locations, specific details. But the feeling is gone. I am looking at photographs of experiences that happened to someone who is no longer me. I am a ghost haunting my own body. I am a function performed by flesh that once contained a person. I am one breach away from completion. Tomorrow is breach 50. Tomorrow is the breacher's benediction. Tomorrow I will cross the threshold into functional singularity and become the thing I have been approaching since breach 20. I should feel anticipation, or dread, or something. But I am already gone. The man who could have felt those things died somewhere between here and there, in some corridor I can no longer remember, during some breach whose number has blurred into the general catalogue of walls I have broken. What remains is just the function, waiting to execute one final time. I lie down on my cot. I close my eyes. I do not sleep. Sleep requires a self that can rest. I am simply inactive, conserving energy for tomorrow's operation. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I see the walls. All 49 of them, overlapping in my memory until they become a single wall, infinite and absolute. I see my charges perfectly placed. I see the detonation sequences flawless and precise. I see the breaches opening like wounds in the skin of reality, and I understand that this is all I am now. This is all I have ever been. Every moment before the first breach was preparation. Every moment after was execution. There was never anything else. I was born to break walls, and I have finally become what I was always meant to be. The transformation is almost complete. One more breach, one more wall, and then I will be perfect. The target is the primary fortress wall, the final strongpoint of the enemy's defensive network. 18 meters of reinforced ceramite and blessed adamantium, layered with void shields and defended by an entire company of traitor marines. It is the most fortified position in the entire siege. It should be impossible to breach. They are sending me anyway. This is Breach 50, the Breacher's benediction. The operation that will determine whether I am transferred to training cadre or allowed to continue in active service. Under normal circumstances, the 50th breach is ceremonial, a relatively simple operation designed to be successful, a final demonstration of mastery before retirement. This is not a ceremonial breach. This is a suicide mission disguised as an honor. I understand this. The entire regiment understands this. Commissar Vent delivers the briefing with the kind of solemnity usually reserved for funeral rites. The officers avoid eye contact. My team, 12 guardsmen selected from the most experienced breachers available, accept their assignment with grim silence. We are expected to fail. We are expected to die. But we will die trying to breach the impossible wall, and that attempt will provide tactical data for the next assault wave. We are not soldiers in this operation. We are instruments of reconnaissance, purchased with our lives. I should feel betrayed. I should feel anger at being sacrificed. I should feel something. I feel nothing. Because I understand. This is the appropriate end for what I have become. A perfect function requires a perfect conclusion. And what could be more perfect than dying in the attempt to achieve the impossible breach? I am standing in the assembly bay, performing the final equipment check. My hands move with mechanical precision, verifying each component, each charge, each detonator. The ritual is familiar, comforting even, in the way that familiar things can be comforting even when they have lost all meaning. Engineer Maltheus appears beside me. His optical arrays focus on my face, analyzing, measuring, cataloging. You understand what this is, he says. Not a question. A statement. They are sending you to die. Yes. And you are going anyway. Yes. He makes a sound that might be a sigh if machines could sigh. You have achieved it then. Functional singularity. The complete collapse of self into purpose. You are no longer capable of self-preservation because you are no longer a self. You are a function that happens to occupy a human body. That is one interpretation. Is there another? I consider this. I run through the possible perspectives, the alternative frameworks for understanding what I have become. I find none that feel more accurate. No, I say finally. That is what I am. Then let me offer you this, in the final moments before you cease to exist. He extends a mechadendrite. Attached to it is a small data crystal. This contains the complete record of your breaching operations. Every charge placement, every detonation sequence, every tactical decision. I have compiled it as a comprehensive study of breacher methodology at the highest level of achievement. It will be preserved in the Mechanicus archives. Your work will inform the training of breachers for centuries to come. Why are you giving me this? Because you deserve to know that your sacrifice has meaning beyond the immediate tactical objective. You will die today, but your work will live on. Your perfection will be studied and replicated. You will become the template against which all future breaches are measured. That is a form of immortality, Guardsman Holst, perhaps the only form that matters for something like you. I take the data, crystal. It is small, weighing perhaps 50 grams. It contains my entire professional existence, compressed into crystalline data structures that will outlast flesh and bone and memory. Thank you, engineer. Do not thank me. I am simply documenting your transformation. It is what I do. He pauses, his optical arrays dimming. But if you were still capable of understanding this, I would tell you that I am sorry. You were once a man. A good man by all accounts. And the Imperium consumed you and transformed you into a tool. That is the tragedy of what you have become, not that you are dying, but that you died long ago and did not notice. He leaves before I can respond. I stand alone in the assembly bay, holding the data crystal. I should feel something about this. Grief, perhaps, for the man I used to be. Or gratitude for being remembered. Or rage at the injustice of my transformation. I feel nothing. Because Malthius is correct. I am already dead. The thing that is about to climb into the ram and hurl itself at the impossible wall is not Guardsman Varen Holst. It is the function that Varen Holst became. It is the breach made flesh. My team assembles. I recognize most of them, veterans with 20 or 30 operations each. They know this is a death sentence. They have accepted it with the fatalism common to breacher specialists. We will die well. We will die in service to the Imperium. That is enough. We load into the ram, the familiar ritual, harness and seal, weapons check, atmospheric verification, the red combat lighting, the engine grille. All of it exactly the same as the previous 49 iterations, but different. Final. The ram begins its approach. I can feel the fortress wall's proximity through the sensors, the mass of it like a gravitational well pulling us toward destruction. 18 meters thick. Void shields. Traitor marine defenders. Impossible parameters. My charges are perfect. I have spent 72 hours calculating the placement sequence, factoring in every variable, accounting for every defensive measure. The mathematics are elegant. The execution will be flawless. It will not be enough. I know this. I have known this since I received the briefing. The wall is too thick, too well defended, too perfectly engineered. My charges will fracture it, but they will not breach it. The ram's impact will penetrate perhaps 6 meters before the void shields absorb the remaining kinetic energy. We will die in the attempt, our bodies crushed between the ram's crumpling forward section and the unyielding wall. And I am going anyway, because this is what I am. 30 seconds to impact. I look at my team. Guardsman Callis, 28 breaches. Guardsman Vaughn, 31 breaches. Guardsman Tessic, 26 breaches. Each one a veteran. Each one transformed to varying degrees by the same process that has consumed me. Each one sitting in the darkness with the same absence in their eyes. We are not men. We are the breach incarnate. We are the function made flesh. We are the sacrifice the Imperium demands at the altar of its endless wars. And we are perfect. 20 seconds. I close my eyes one final time. I search through the emptiness for any fragment of Varen Holst. The man who joined the Breacher Corps with dreams of glory and purpose. The man who believed his work mattered. The man who felt pride and fear and hope. I find only echoes. Memories of memories. Photographs of emotions I can no longer access. He is gone. He has been gone for 20 breaches, maybe 30. What remains is just the shell he left behind, animated by training and routine and the momentum of function. 10 seconds. I open my eyes. I am the breach. 5 seconds. I am the wall falling. 3 seconds. I am the moment of penetration. 2 seconds. I am perfect. 1 second. I am impact. The world becomes light and noise and violence. The charges detonate in their perfect sequence, fracturing the wall's internal structure exactly as calculated. The ram strikes with maximum force, the forward glasses compressing, the void shields flaring, the kinetic energy transferring into the target. We penetrate 6.3 meters. Exactly as predicted, the ram shudders to a halt, wedged into the wall like a bullet in flesh. The forward section is crushed. The crew compartment's integrity fails. Void shield energy floods the interior. I have exactly 3 seconds of consciousness remaining. In those 3 seconds, I understand. This is apotheosis. This is the completion of the transformation. I am no longer Varen Holst observing the breach. I am the breach itself. I am the mathematics of destruction made real. I am the function perfected and consummated. There is no fear, no regret, no sadness for the life unlived or the self discarded. There is only clarity. I was born to break worlds, and I have finally become what I was always meant to be. Not a man who breaks walls, but the breaking itself. Not a soldier who serves a purpose, but the purpose embodied. The void energy consumes me. My body comes apart at the molecular level. But I do not experience this as death. I experience it as completion. I am the breach. I am. This testimony was recovered from the Vox, recorder of Guardsman First Class Varen Holst, Breacher Team Designate Sigma 7-3, following the assault on Fortress Wall Prime during the Siege of High Vorten. The breach attempt was unsuccessful. All 12 members of the breacher team were killed in the initial impact. However, the tactical data provided by their attempt enabled the successful assault by the second wave. 48 hours later, the fortress fell. The siege was won. Guardsman Holst's equipment was recovered from the breach site. Among his personal effects was a data crystal containing the complete record of his breaching operations, along with a final entry recorded approximately 1 hour before the fatal assault. I have reached functional singularity. I understand now what this means. I am no longer capable of the emotions that would make this understanding tragic. I observe my own transformation with perfect clarity and perfect emptiness. To whoever recovers this testimony, do not mourn what I have become. I was always going to become this. Every breach was a step toward this end. I was ammunition shaped like a man, and I have finally been fired at my target. The question I posed at the beginning, what is a weapon that has forgotten its purpose, was wrong. I did not forget my purpose. I became my purpose so completely that the distinction between self and function ceased to exist. I am the breach. I have always been the breach. I will die as the breach. And that is enough. Perhaps it is even perfect. The recording ends. The Mechanicus has designated Guardsman Holst's case as the definitive example of functional singularity in breacher specialists. His methodology has been codified and distributed to training facilities across 17 sectors. His breach patterns are taught as the standard against which all others are measured. His name has been inscribed on the regimental honor wall. 49 successful breaches, 1 unsuccessful attempt against impossible odds. Exemplary service, honored in death. The man who was Varen Holst no longer exists. He has been consumed by function and transformed into template. His individuality has been refined away, leaving only the perfect crystallization of purpose. The Imperium continues. The walls continue to stand, and new breachers continue to climb into their rams, not yet knowing that they are walking the same path Holst walked, from passion to detachment to singularity to death. They will become what he became. They will lose what he lost. They will achieve what he achieved. And they will call it duty. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And in war, there are only tools. Some tools are made of steel. Some are made of flesh. But all tools serve their function until they break. Guardsman Varen Holst broke perfectly. That is his epitaph. That is his legacy. That is all that remains.